Now we're going to look at the supply curve in more depth and look at what moves it. What are some of the things that affect supply? Well, there's more than just price. Price, obviously, is a big factor. The higher the price goes, the more firms are willing to produce. But there are the things, in addition to price, that will affect a company's willingness to supply a good or service to the market. One is technology. So let's take a look. This is my demand schedule, or excuse me, my supply schedule for Twinkies. You can see that I'm willing, that the more I can get for a Twinkie, the more I'm willing to produce. But let's suppose, and well, I am this supply schedule is assuming technology level number one. The current technology is a pan, okay, an oven, some spoons that I use to mix together. Okay, that's my level of technology. But let's suppose that some new technology is invented, that a super duper Twinkie making machine of some kind, and so under that situation, we'll call that technology level number two. So all I have to do is I just pour all this junk in this machine, and it just does everything, spits them out, wraps them, the whole bit. I mean, it just makes this stuff as fast as can be. Well. Under that circumstance, at a price of one down here, where I used to be willing to not produce any, with this new amazing machine, I'll jump into the market. I'd be willing to produce there. I wouldn't have to miss as many my favorite shows. So I can, the machine's doing the work while I'm in there, clicking through the channels. And at a price of three, where I used to produce only one, see, I'd do three now. And a price of five, I used to produce three, but now I'd be willing to produce five, and so on. At seven, I used to produce five, now I'm willing to do seven. And at nine, I used to produce seven, and now I'm willing to do nine. So at every price, I'm willing to produce more than I used to. So that's what new technology does. Well, let me graph that. Okay, there's our supply curve, our original supply curve at T1, so we'll call that supply curve number one. And now let's plot the new supply curve. Well, let me change the color. I forgot to change the color on the... Okay, so one, price of one, now it's one. Okay, right there. At a price of three, now I'm willing to produce three. Right there. Price is five and five. Let's see, that's right there. 7 and 7. Right there, and 9 and 9, right there. So there's the new supply curve because of the new, better technology. As you can see, each point shifted out to the right at any given price. I'm willing to produce more than I did before because we got this new technology. Well, there are other things that affect supply, so I'm going to write it like this. Supply is a function of, well, we just saw technology. A new technology will shift that out to the right, and that's usually just a rightward shift. We usually don't see that shift to the left, at least not in the short term or long term by our means, our standards. Over long periods of time, I guess it shifts to the left. We see the ancient inhabitants of the Americas, Central America, somehow they lost their technology. They built these amazing buildings down there. Then guess what? Somehow they forgot. Or something happened over time. Anyway, they stopped building those. So that's usually high high tech is a major factor there. We see that all the time with that supply curve shifting out with new technology, better ways of doing things. Okay. Well, another thing that will affect the supply curve is the price of inputs. Okay. Well, let's say my Twinkies, here we go. Here's my supply curve for Twinkies. And now the price of sugar falls. Okay, if the price of sugar falls, well, I don't have to spend as much on producing the Twinkies. My costs have gone down. So I'm willing, again, to produce more Twinkies at any given price because I have lower costs. That will shift the curve out to the right. On the other hand, let's say labor costs go up. Let's say that the minimum wage is increased. You know, I've got these kids in the neighborhood working for me in my garage, and now I've got to pay them quite a bit more. What's going to happen? My costs go up, and we are going to see a movement to the left. The supply curve will shift to the left, okay, as the firm incurs higher costs. So price of inputs, when they go down, the curve will shift out to the right, and when they go up, the curve will shift to the left. Another shifter of the supply curve is, well, I'll just say natural, natural disasters. It may not be natural, or the flip side may be perfect weather. Okay, so anyway, let's take a look at a natural disaster. Here we go. Right, here's the supply curve. Let's say this is wheat. Okay. Here's the supply of wheat. The higher the price, the more farmers are willing to produce. Well, let's say a tornado or something, or a freeze or something comes through and destroys it. Okay, well, that pretty directly takes the wheat off the market because it's destroyed. This could be oranges in Florida with a freeze. They're frozen, or a hurricane comes through and blows them down. It rather, like I say, directly, they're gone. They're destroyed. On the other hand, the flip side of a natural disaster, let's say, something really, really good. Let's say that there's perfect growing weather, absolutely the right amount of rain, right amount of sun, right temperatures, everything. You could have what's called a bumper crop, where you actually get more just because everything was so right. Okay, that would be a rightward shift. Now, this natural disaster thing, we'll get back to that later, talk about the economics of these natural disasters and why prices go up before and after. And, we hear about gouging and accusations of gouging. You might have a different outlook on that when we talk about that. So the bottom line, I'll give you a preview, you can't consume the same amount. When the supply curve shifts to the left, it is impossible to consume, for everybody, to consume the same amount they used to consume because it simply doesn't exist. Okay, that's something that seems to escape a lot of people. Okay, moving on. As with demand, expectations of the future will affect today's output decisions. Okay, here's supply. And let's suppose that you expect prices to rise for the good you produce, for whatever reason, you think prices are going to go up in the future, you're going to be able to charge more down the road. How will that affect your output decisions now? Are you going to hurry up and sell as many as you can now at the lower price? Or might you hold back and wait for that higher price to become available? Well, if your expectation is higher prices in the future, you're going to hold off a little bit today, right? On the other hand, if you're good, you think for whatever reason the price you sell at is going to go down, well, you're going to kind of want to sell as much as possible right now. So everything else equal, of course, that's something I'll talk about in a minute, is you're going to want to speed up production and sell as much as you can right now. Another factor is taxes. Taxes. Well, this is just like the price of inputs, okay? Or it raises your costs. If taxes go up, it lowers your costs if taxes go down. So let's say there's a tax increase. You're going to produce less because your costs have gone up. If taxes go down, or if you receive a subsidy from government, if you receive a subsidy, that lowers your costs, right? Lower taxes or a subsidy, either one, that's going to shift the curve out to the right. So whichever way you're going to go, lower costs, you'll produce more. Higher costs, produce less. And the number of sellers. Let's go back to that pizza example. Here's the supply of pizza. And let's say that because this college town has a lot of students, boy, a lot of others are noticing how much pizza is being sold, and they decide to get on board. They decide that they want to share some of these pizzas, some of this money. Well, that's going to shift the supply curve for pizza out to the right. There's going to be more pizza available in that market than there were before. If in the summer people leave town and there's just not enough business, you know what? One of the pizza companies might go out of business. Might decide to just say, hey, there's just not enough business for another pizza maker. So that's basically it for supply. So supply, the higher the price, the more firms will be willing to supply. But that's not the only thing. We've got these other things that will affect firms' willingness to produce. And since we don't see technology on the graph, we don't see price of inputs on the graph, anything that changes outside the system, outside the model, the curve is going to have to shift. Okay, and that's how we deal with that. Now, terminology. When we, just like with demand, we've got to differentiate between a movement along the supply curve and a shift of the supply curve. Okay, so we call, let's see, a change in quantity supplied. That is a movement along the curve. Okay, just like with demand. With demand, a change in quantity demanded was a movement along the demand curve. Well, a change in quantity supplied is a movement along the supply curve. A change in supply, well, that's when the whole curve shifts. So, we want to keep track of that. All right, so we're going to now, in the next video, put these curves together, and we're going to shift these curves around and determine what happens to the equilibrium price as price of inputs changes, as maybe taste and preference changes. You know, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on, and it's going to seem complicated at first, but it's not. Not if you take it one step at a time. If you take it one step at a time, it's as easy as can be. All right, so that's it for supply.